listening to a free preview. For full episode, visit the Granite Mountain Substack and become a member of the Premium XL Prestige Sigma bonus stream.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Granite Mountain Movie Club. I've got a special guest tonight. I've got Astral here. Astral, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be here. I appreciate you having me on, and we're talking about one of my favorite movies.
How do you say it, by the way? I say Ex Machina, but is that right? I don't even know.
Well, I say Ex Machina. Well,
Yeah,
I believe
Ex Machina.
the correct pronunciation is Machina, which is, it's interesting because I read, I guess today, that it's Latin, and I think it is Latin. However, I read in Aristotle's Poetics, he talked about. He talks about the Deus ex machina in the translation that I have, but that's Latin, and Aristotle's obviously Greek.
And my understanding of the phrase Deus ex machina, as I understand it, it's like a story element, right? Where some divine intervention,
Right.
I guess solves the problem at the end of the story or something like that.
Yeah. But I
What
don't
does it
think
mean?
that's what's happening in the story, however.
Yeah, that's what I was a little confused about, because there's not unless maybe from the perspective of Ava, but we'll get into that. But so yeah, this movie came out 2014. I mean, I guess in the US it really came out in 2015, but either way, it's about the 10-year anniversary of this film. And Alex Garland, who made it, this was his first, and I would say this is definitely a very impressive first movie.
Very impressive, yes.
And arguably he hasn't lived up to it since. I'm curious how many of his other things you've seen and what your take on where he's at.
Well, yeah, okay, so I'm glad you asked that because it's an A24 film, and A24 films kind of all have the same feel to them. I almost wonder if there's somebody at that studio who sort of goes over the finished product and sort of fine tunes it. Because they really, all the ones I've seen, except for maybe the Eggers film with Robert Pattinson and The Lighthouse. Yeah, that one's a little bit different. That one's a little bit the vibe, the feel of that movie's a little bit different. But it feels like a lot of the A24 movies have the same feel to them, and someone there, a producer or somebody, goes over them and kind of gives them the same sheen to them.
Yeah, I've wondered about that too, because I don't know the business that well, but it's do they make them use the same lenses or something? Because a lot of the stuff just feels
exactly.
the same.
I agree, but
this was early. This was early A24, right? This was kind of early in their thing.
Yeah, very early. The Witch, I think, came out the year or two before that, and The Witch and this have a very similar feel. Midsommar, they all feel kind of the same. But there's another movie by him that I've seen. I forgot what it is now, but I haven't followed him. He's not a director that I follow.
He did Annihilation. He did.
Yeah, Annihilation. That's the other one I saw.
Yeah, and totally coincidentally, I'm probably covering that one soon as well. But I didn't intend to.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to interrupt you, but what studio? I don't think that was an A24 film, or was it?
I don't know if he did that one with A24 as well.
I don't think so. Go on, sorry.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah,
but I'm pulling up his.
But no, I haven't really followed him as a director, and I don't really feel like I'm going to. You know what I mean? He's not one of those.
Yeah.
This was I consider this a flawlessly executed film. It's superbly well written, superbly well directed, it's superbly well acted. It's one of my favorite films of the millennia. But no, he didn't really go on. I mean, Annihilation is sort of like a dud, in my opinion. Those books, I tried to read the books. I couldn't even get through the first one. I think it's a trilogy. I don't know what else he's even done besides Annihilation.
So he did something called Men, which I did not see because it looked too dumb. And then he did Civil War, which just came out. That's the one
that's right. Yes, I knew that.
Yeah, what kind of American are you? I just watched that one a few months ago. It's I mean, it's kind of interesting to watch, but it's not good, I would say. And he's got another one coming out, I guess, like next year, something called Warfare. Although he said he's done. I think making Civil War, he got like too depressed. He says he wants to quit making movies.
Well, this movie was fantastic, and for a first movie for him, it's like the guy he hit it out of the park, in my opinion. I mean, do you think that?
Yes, I agree. I think it's a very strong movie. When and I wanted to get into this because when I first saw it back like in 2014 or 2015, at the time I mean, I wouldn't call myself like a sophisticated movie guy or anything. I watch a lot of movies. But at the time I was like, this is like one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Like I really, really liked it. I thought it totally worked for me at the time. Um it's rewatching it like a couple days ago. It's not it's not as quite as good as I remembered, but it is still very strong. Like it's a really, really good movie in my opinion.
Well, for me, I would put this. The thing is I have like to like make your list of favorites or whatever. I
Uh-huh.
kind of have to. I like to separate them from like all time versus like the 20th century, especially the late 20th century, like after
Yeah.
1945, 50, say, and the new millennium, because movies really fell off, and Hollywood and film just really it, it, it was a serious art form that you could put in the annals of Western civilization, along with sculpture and painting and poetry and the novel and everything. There was an era where I feel that film was an art form that was as good as and on the level of anything else that Western civilization has ever put out. And then it kind of fell off, in my opinion. And there's some people that are sort of reviving it, in my opinions, like Nicholas Winding Refn. Refn is probably my favorite director. But for the most part, and I think he is someone who puts out consistently good movies. But for the most part, I think it's like a bunch of one-offs. Like you have these anomalies, Or Eggers is another one who I
Mhm.
think consistently puts out good movies. But for the most part, like if you get a really uh I don't know, a masterpiece maybe. I might go as far as to call this a masterpiece actually, and I don't use that term loosely for film. Um I think they're almost like anomalies in this millennium. So I like to kind of separate it, like anything in the new millennium that is a good movie. It doesn't necessarily hold up to what we were putting out, especially in America in the 70s and 80s and 90s.
Mhm.
But this movie, I think, and there's a couple others I could throw out there. Valhalla Rising, Blade Runner 2049. I think those movies kind of like are elevated to the level. The Witch and The Lighthouse, actually, I think are on that level. A24 is the best production company that there is, in my opinion. I think you can like put them with the greats of all time. But for the most part, I think film after I don't know, I don't even know what movie, I don't even know where the turning point happened, but it was somewhere at the turn of the millennium. Film as a medium really kind of like jumped the shark. It sort of fell off as a medium, and it really just became commercial. It became totally commercial. I mean, Hollywood was always a commercial artistic endeavor,
Mhm.
but there was a phase where it was putting out like high art, what I would call high art. And I wish I could say that we've had a return to high art. I don't think we have had a return to high art, but I do think that there are people the last 25 years that are putting out films that you could call high art, and I think this is one of them, in my opinion. I had Curtis Yarvin on my show, and I wanted to ask him about Blade Runner 2049. And I forgot exactly the context of asking about that movie, but
Mhm.
his response was like, "Actually, I don't really want to talk about that movie. I want to talk about Ex Machina. I think Ex Machina is the movie." And I agree with him. Actually, he's right. I think this is better than Blade Runner 2049. I mean, I don't know what you think about that movie. And I have to say, like, when this came out, it sort of passed me by. Like when it came out, I was like, it's like The Matrix spawned all these clones, and it spawned all these like copycat movies. So when this
Like
came out, I was like,
serious
oh,
serious
it's just
sci-fi. Yeah.
yeah. I was like, oh, it's just another Matrix. But then when Blade Runner 2049 came out, I watched that and I was like, oh, hold on, wait a second. What was that, like 2017, 18 maybe? I don't know. I saw it in 2017 or 18. And I was
Yeah, it was
like,
2017. Yeah.
I think I saw it in 2018. And I was like, maybe I've been like wrong about film over the last 20 years. Like, this movie is fucking fantastic. It's like better than the first one. And the first movie I went and watched after I sort of had that revelation was Ex Machina. And I thought to myself, this is even better than Blade Runner, in my opinion. Which is
Yeah.
a big deal for me to say that, because I think Blade Runner 2049 is like, top 3 best movies of the last 25 years. And I think
I
Ex
so
Machina is
yeah.
better
So
in my opinion. I know that's controversial to say. Sorry. Go
well, I
ahead.
mean, I definitely would go with Blade Runner 2049. But it's just doing so many different things, and I like intimate or small movies, or like this one feels kind
Yeah.
of trapped and stuff, but in a good way. It's meant, it serves the story. But I do ultimately have a love for big things that are like epic feeling and stuff. So Blade Runner 2049, like it's hard for me to I couldn't come down from that, like, in kind of that one would always sort of be ahead of this one, ahead of Ex Machina. But no, I mean, I think Ex Machina, it's such a tight little movie that's um yeah, it's just a tight story, good story, looks beautiful. One thing I meant to mention, part of my reassessment, I think, comes from, and this is not the fault of like Alex Garland or A24 or the Ex Machina movie, but so much after it, like especially prestige streaming and cable stuff, sci-fi, kind of looked like this. And so now going back and watching this, it's like I'm like being reminded of like Black Mirror, which was I didn't really like Black Mirror. I only watched some of the first season. Which, by the way, the main guy, Domhnall Gleeson, in Ex Machina, I don't know if you've seen this, but there was a Black Mirror episode where he's like a android or something like that, and he's like some woman's like love love partner sort of thing, and it's a similar sort of thing to this. And so it's kind of funny, he's done like another version of this movie, but on the TV show.
Yeah,
um
I think I've seen every episode of Black Mirror.
yeah, and so like this kind of reminds me of some of that sort of stuff, and that's not that's not the fault of this movie, because they're kind of copying this movie. But going back, it's like hard for me to uh not see that stuff, which is kind of annoying. And it's, like I say, it's not their fault. But
Well, but that did that come out after this film?
oh yeah, I think so. And that's what I'm saying. Like they are copying Ex Machina. Like Ex Machina didn't. It's not fair for me to like downgrade it because of that. But that's part of what I was seeing when I was rewatching it, is it was reminding me of TV and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but that's actually a strength of this film. It's not a fault of this film. It means it sort of like set the tone for what came after it.
Certainly, it
I mean,
influenced. Yeah, it
there's
definitely
so much of
influenced.
this movie that's relevant, not just to like entertainment, not just a film, but like the fact that Oscar Isaac's character was like a search engine CEO or whatever he was. I think he may be a little bit based on what's his name, Steve Jobs from
Jobs or
Apple. Yeah, no, Steve Jobs from Apple. Like he's supposed to be one of these like tech billionaire guys.
Yeah, he's a little unlike any of the billionaires we actually have, but he's sort of a mix of like Musk and Zuckerberg
Yeah, yeah,
and Jobs.
exactly, exactly.
Um, yeah, he's sort of like all of these guys, but also not. Um, and yeah, just to reiterate the thing, like it isn't the movie's fault, but it was. I don't know. Did you ever see Devs? Alex Garland also did this TV show Devs,
No, I never even heard of that.
and I only watched the pilot, and it was kind of good. But it's a similar thing. It's sort of like it starts out with this like tech company, and it's got these dystopian vibes and stuff. And again, like Annihilation felt a little more TV, when I came back, or like it felt a little bit more like a Netflix movie or something than I would want to. But that's, again, that's not their fault.
Well, so
Okay.
here's the thing.
Okay.
Here's the thing. Like I think it's funny. So okay, so let me just get this out there. I rewatched this for this episode. This was already one of my favorite movies. I rewatched this for this episode today. Actually, I watched it yesterday and today. Actually, twice. And for me, it held up. For me, it held up. For me, it was like so for okay. There's no way we can talk about this without like spoilers or whatever. Like
Oh yeah,
if
yeah.
you
We
have
do full spoilers. Yeah.
yeah, full
Go
spoilers.
for it.
Like you have to see them. And the thing is like there's this whole reveal at the end of the movie. There's this whole reveal that like at the end that throws the whole thing into like a different color. So you
Yeah.
see everything that's happened up till the end differently because you see the motivations of the characters are not what you thought they were.
Hmm.
And in my memory, so I hadn't seen this movie in 7, 8, 9 years, whatever it was. And it's so funny because I didn't even realize I was doing this. I did not realize that this main actress, Alicia Vikander, who I've never seen
Yeah.
in any other movie, in my memory, it was Natalie Portman. Like she was Natalie Portman. And then I watched it and I'm like, "Oh, right, this isn't Natalie. This is not a Natalie Portman movie." And it's almost like
Yeah.
I almost was like, "Well, you know what? I think they probably wanted Natalie Portman to be the actress, but it was his first movie. A24 was pretty new at the time. They couldn't get her. She was a huge star already by that time. So they got somebody who looked like her and kind of had her vibe. And then he went on to do Annihilation and they got Natalie Portman, which is who he wanted the whole time. Which is the really funny thing about that is I actually didn't think Natalie Portman was like the best person for Annihilation. She would have been much better for this. She would have been perfect for this.
I could
Um,
believe that though. I could believe what you're putting forward, that she might have been the first choice. I'll look into that later.
yeah, I mean, I tried to like look up what other movies she was doing, and like, it's funny. Like, okay, so let's. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. So let's get this out there at the beginning, and then we can really unpack everything. So first of all, in my opinion, this is basically I I don't know. I think this is a flawless movie. I don't say that very often. I mean, people won't know that about me. I talk about movies a lot. I don't really talk about flawless movies. I think there's only a few flawless movies out there. And I'm not sure, but I think I'm ready to call this a flawless movie. I don't think there's any moment cuz the thing about what was the other one we were talking about Blade Runner 2049. There's a couple
Yeah.
moments in Blade Runner where I'm like this doesn't necessarily need to be in here. Like what are they really doing? Like I don't think Harrison Ford, some of his scenes were like he didn't really act like Deckard, you know? Like we know him as
Yeah.
Deckard from fucking Blade Runner, you know? And I kind of felt like a couple of the scenes with him was like what is this? Like what are we doing here? Especially like with the scene with the AI like the hologram projection of Elvis and all that. And he's like
Oh, I love
quoting.
that part.
Yeah, I
When
don't
it,
know. That I thought that kind of like took away from it. So I wouldn't go as far as to call it a masterpiece or flawless. But there's really, I mean, dude, I've seen this movie 3 times. I saw this movie twice in the last 48 hours. And I could say there was no moment where I was like, what is this scene? Like what is this line? Like nothing felt out of place at any point.
oh yeah, it's no doubt. I would not disagree with that at all. Like it's and you mentioned like the ending, how it changes the perception. It's a very well plotted story, and then it has this like it's kind of like two twists at the end basically,
Yeah, yep,
and
yep.
both of them are well executed, and it gives it this like it gives it a lot of rewatchability because you can watch it again knowing the Oscar Isaac character. I think his name's Nathan. You can watch it again, sort of from Nathan's perspective, and gives it a kind of a whole new twist. And it's like is something we'll get into maybe later, but it's like the movie portrays him as I guess bad, but then you watch it again and it's like, is he that bad? I mean, he's weird about the way he does research, that's for sure, but he wasn't, he wasn't necessarily wrong about some of the things he was doing.
Well, so assuming that all the listeners have seen the film, I think the
We'll
second,
assume they have. Yeah.
yeah, we kind of have to, and
Yeah.
so you can't really get in depth with it without assuming that. The second viewing, I realized like it's easier to, I have to say this, like there are some movies that don't necessarily hold up on a second viewing unless they have like a high entertainment value. Like, so you
Hmm.
came on my show and we talked about a bunch of stuff. But one of the movies we talked about was RoboCop. And RoboCop has a great, it has, people remember RoboCop very well. And it's a highly entertaining film. And The Terminator's another one from that era. Conan the Barbarian from that era. Total Recall, Starship Troopers from the same director. These movies are highly rewatchable, but the reason it's they're rewatchable for a different reason. Because they're not intellectual, they're not really smart movies. They're really entertaining movies, and they keep you engaged all the way through. You know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
like when I've seen RoboCop, I don't know how many times, 5, 6, 10 times, Terminator 10 times. And all the way through, you're like you love to see RoboCop or the Terminator doing the things that they do, the things that they're famous for, the things that they're known for. The ED-209, when he kills the guy at the executive board meeting, it's like it never doesn't deliver on rewatching. This movie is not rewatchable for the same reason. This movie is rewatchable for a much more clever reason. It's rewatchable because it's a much more clever movie, is what I mean to say. And the
Yeah.
way this movie is set up, it's like the first time you watch it, there's a real big payoff for the reveal. But the second and third time you watch it, you realize, like, okay, for this movie to have the reveal and the payoff that it has, like, the writer and the director, who's the same guy in this case, really had to like work at this. He really had to like put this together in the perfect way to deliver it the way he did. And if he didn't, the rewatch would have fallen flat. Like, for example, The Departed is a movie that I don't really think holds up on a rewatch. I love that movie. It's one of my favorite movies. But one of the reasons why it's one of my favorite movies and so great is because at the end, when the dominoes start falling and Matt Damon's character gets killed and Leonardo DiCaprio's character gets killed, and prior to that, I'm going backwards here, Martin Sheen's character gets killed. It's like, oh my fucking god, over and over and over again. But in the on a rewatch, like, that's what's gonna happen, you know, and it's sort of like going through all the motions of watching the film again, like, doesn't pay off as much. But in this, on the rewatch, you see like, oh, I see what the director was doing. I see what the writer was doing. Like, he pulled this off so well because he sets up Oscar Isaac as the villain, and he convinces
Hmm.
you that he's the villain, and you're totally with it, and you're totally with Caleb. Caleb is the protagonist here. You're totally with Caleb, and then at the very end, you see, oh my god, Caleb's the dupe. Caleb's fucked. Caleb fucks the whole thing. Oscar
Hmm.
Isaac was like the genius the whole time. So one of the questions I had today on my third rewatch was, and you had the same question too. Like, is Oscar Isaac the bad guy? Well, on the first watch, I was like, he's not the bad guy, or excuse me, he is the bad guy. Obviously, he sets him up as the bad guy. And on the rewatch, I was like, oh, no, actually, no. Oscar Isaac, like, isn't really as bad as you think he is. And then on the third rewatch, you're like, actually, like, he's like the good guy.
So you could take issue with the thing he's doing. You could take issue with it just in general. You say, oh, someone should not be playing around with this stuff.
Playing
This
God.
should not be trying
Playing
to
God.
create AI. Yeah, they should not try to be play God. But then, but he already is, and then once he is the movie wants you to. I think it's funny. The movie, he's wearing a wife beater the whole movie. Like I don't think
Yeah,
that's
right. I
like
know.
that's intentional.
He looked kind of ridiculous. Let's be honest about that.
Yeah, and he's always like, he's got his punching bag. He's always kind of, and he's a little aggressive. He's kind of, he has a weird style of interaction with Caleb and stuff. And part of that is that he's playing Caleb. Like he wants Caleb to sort of hate him because that will make it easier for the robot to manipulate him.
Right.
And so he's doing all this sort of stuff. And the movie, the movie is like, oh, we think of him as, oh, he's abusive to women, even though these aren't real women, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so we think he's like this bad, mean guy, but the fact that he's keeping them in like the cages and he doesn't let them, out even though they really want to, he's not wrong to do that. Like that's the right move because we see what she does as soon as she does get out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I compare this movie to Blade Runner 2049. I mean, in my opinion, these two movies go together. I think these two movies are about the same thing. These two movies are about the plight, if you will. I know it's kind of a hackneyed thing to say. The plight of the modern man in a feminist society, especially like think about it now, right? We're recording this in 2024 and things are bad. But you got to remember, like 2015 to 2019, especially when these two movies came out, 14 to 2017, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the height of like the Me Too movement. It was the height of the Million March for Women or whatever when Trump got elected and they were wearing pussy hats. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like these movies came out like at ground. These were like ground zero of like feminism, like sort of like taking over America in a weird way, because like Trump was the president and he was like the grab them by the pussy president, but like at the same time people were losing their jobs, people were being Title IX at universities, people were being Me Too'd. And those two movies like show like empowered strong women, and in both cases they were cyborgs. In both cases the women were like cyborg AI, like super killers, just like the Terminator and just like RoboCop were back in the 80s. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So these were these like impossible to defeat women. My first watch of Blade Runner 2049, I was like, what's the deal? Like, this dude's like, all of the fights that he gets in are with like women, especially the one whose name I'm forgetting right now, but she's like Neander Wallace's like right hand, like she's like the
Yeah.
Luca Brasi.
Love.
Yeah, Love. She's like the Luca Brasi of fucking Neander Wallace. And he has to fight her, and I'm like, what is the deal? Like, why? He's like engaging in this mortal combat with this female, you know? But it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
she's a cyborg. She's like a super killer. She's like super strong, you know? So she's like, she's not really a girl boss, because the girl bosses are like good, like Wonder Woman or whatever. The girl boss is
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be this positive female role model. But in this film, Ava, and in that film, Love, they're not positive. They're not girl bosses. They're not positive female role models. They're like menacing forces of evil that the men have to like contend with. And Ava gets the better of Caleb in Ex Machina, and in Blade Runner, like what is it, Joseph K, like Ryan Gosling's character Joseph K,
Yeah.
like he wins at the end, but like just barely, you know. And
Yeah.
I think this is like a metaphor, or like a symbolization of like the modern masculine man in a feminized society. Like he's going up against these like superpowered women who have the power of the state behind them, that like, you could have sex with your coworker and you lose your career, lose your job. You could get divorced from your wife, who she did everything wrong. She could be the driving force behind the divorce, but yet you lose half your business, you lose your house, and you lose your kids to her. So she's this like super powered, like malevolent force that I think is like represented in this like antagonist in these films. Because Ava is like, dude, Ava is like the most wicked fucking. I mean, she's the perfect representation of.
Yeah. So she masterfully, she uses like multiple phases of manipulation, and she's good at all sorts of things. She's good at like making him feel vulnerable, good at making him feel like she's in danger. So she manipulates him from multiple sides, and then like the moment she gets a chance, she turns on him, screws him over, and presumably like she's going to go out in the world and ruin it.
To like, take over.
Almost,
I mean, that's what I think.
yeah,
She's gonna take over.
almost like what's happening now.
Yeah.
If you look at those charts where it's like if only single women voted or something. So she's about to go like reenact that at the next, or she's about to enact that at the next level. Like it's not just voting anymore. Now it's like moving on to a new species. We're going to kill out the old humans, and everyone's going to be a cyborg now or something. And it's funny because the movie is very explicit about this. And but you in a mainstream review you would not hear, and mainstream critics liked this movie. I doubt many of them, maybe some caught this, but I doubt many would have pointed out how like suspicious of women this movie is.
Oh,
because
yeah, this is an anti-feminist film, no doubt.
Yeah,
about
and the Nathan character, he's very explicit. He's like, no, this I coded her girl. She is a girl. I even gave her like heterosexual female impulses. Like, there's no question about it. Like, this is supposed to be modeled after real women, and then like as such, like even the creator like even he underestimates like his own like the power of like the feminine tricks.
He underestimates the power of the feminine tricks. What do you mean?
He creates her, right, and he gets sort of defeated and tricked by her. Like even
you mean Oscar Isaac?
Yeah. Even he like
okay.
he's not prepared for like feminine manipulation. Like he thought he was maybe because he created her, but he wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, so the movie's perfect, man. I don't know what else to say. So like, okay, so they're in this like this like what do you laboratory, I guess, but it's like this readout hidden in like the fjords of Norway. I wasn't sure
Yeah.
where this movie took place the first time I saw it, but I realized like, okay, they're flying over ice caps, they're flying over
The
glaciers.
glacier, yeah.
Yeah. So it's this like hidden place that you can't even get near. Like helicopter has to like land in a field like far away, and you have to walk down the river to get to it. And it's all locked up. And the guy's basically a recluse. Oscar Isaac's character is basically a recluse, setting it all up. And he has Caleb there for an experiment, and he basically wants to use Caleb as like a pawn to see if Ava could manipulate Caleb into letting her out. And when you're watching it, it's like, okay, so like in like a cheaper movie, like a cheap horror movie or something, would have like it wouldn't have been so airtight, but I feel like this is airtight. So for example, there's all these power failures. And during the power failures, Ava and Caleb like scheme against Nathan, Oscar Isaac's character, to help her escape. But then one of the things that happens during the reveal at the end is that Oscar Isaac like knew all along that they were scheming, because he was like spying on them during these power failures. And I remember being like, is this like a weakness of the plot, like these power failures? Like, is this the Deus Ex Machina? Like the hand of God comes in and like causes these power failures so they can like scam and scheme? Well, if that was the case, this would not be a flawless movie. If that was the case, this would not be like such an airtight film. But in the movie, Oscar Isaac like figures out like, okay, they could be scheming behind my back during the power failure, so I'm gonna put a battery powered camera and spy on them during the power failures, and he like figures them out. So I remember like one of the things I was thinking like was like, is Caleb smarter? Did Caleb outsmart Oscar Isaac? And I guess you could. I don't know where I stand on this. I guess I got to ask your opinion. Like
Nathan's only real weakness, he is presumably a lot smarter than Caleb, but his only real weakness is his alcohol, which I think the alcohol for most of the movie is a performance. Like he's just sort of
Yeah.
he wants Caleb to think he's got this weakness, but then in the movie, I think that one night he does actually go too far, and that's where Caleb is able to get the best, get one over on him. But
Yeah.
so I think that's I think that's the way the movie explains that. Is it's just that alcohol thing.
Well, that's perfect. No, you totally were thinking the same thing I was, which is that. So okay, so that's the one thing about Nathan that I was like, is this is a little much. Like, would this brilliant genius billionaire who's one of the richest men in the world like really be like pounding like cheap beer, like Mexican beers, like every night while he's like developing like the perfect AI? Like, I don't really think he would. I don't really know if he would, but maybe he would. They gave him this character flaw or whatever, like he's this alcoholic. But the question I'm asking is like, so Caleb, the plot is that Caleb gets him drunk and then switches the locking mechanism on the doors so that when the power failure happens, the locking mechanism normally locks everything down because Caleb usually has a technological, I mean, excuse me, Nathan usually has an ability to like monitor the whole place technologically, and he knows everything that's happening everywhere. But during the power failures, he can't monitor the whole place. So as a failsafe, he makes it so that when the power fails, there's a lockdown. So Caleb hacks like the system and reverses it so that when there's a power failure, instead of there being a lockdown, everything is unlocked. And he gets Nathan drunk and switches the code so that everything unlocks instead of it locks. So Ava causes the power failure and everything unlocks. Then she gets out and she kills Nathan. The question I'm asking, and this is maybe the only thing that I came away with like wondering about. The question is, did Caleb outsmart Nathan, or did Ava outsmart Nathan? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, it's
I,
I guess.
do you get that question?
Yeah, and I think it's ultimately Ava, and it's just that she, I guess was able to perceive, or she even knew. She kind of knew exactly where each one was intellectually. Maybe she's able to perceive that, or she actually had that like data from, because Nathan like trained her on his company's data, and he trained her, I think, in advance of this. Well, I don't know if they explicitly say this, so I'm not sure if she's like given like a file on Caleb specifically. But either way, she knows that she kind of knows how they compare to each other intellectually and in terms of like their technical talent and stuff.
Right,
So
exactly.
I think she kind of knows like what he is capable of, and she nudges him along. So I think it's basically her, and
Yeah,
she knows Caleb's capable of doing this if given the shot, and she helps him get the chance.
I agree.
That's the way I'm
That's my
thinking of it.
take. That's my take. But I'm not 100% convinced. But the fact that you agree with that convinces me
Yeah.
that I think what happened is that Ava outsmarted Nathan and used Caleb to do her bidding to get her out. And so okay, so let's just ask it. Let's just talk explicitly here. Like, Nathan, the reason why the director and the writer, the same guy, the writer director, is
Yeah.
brilliant in my opinion, is that he does the perfect job of setting Oscar Isaac's character Nathan up as the villain, as this evil tech billionaire overlord playing God, which is exactly what Neander Wallace is supposed to be. This is why I think
Hmm.
this is a better movie than Blade Runner 2049. Because Neander Wallace is just this heavy-handed, like, tech billionaire, like, playing God. And that's it.
Yeah.
But Oscar
He comes
Isaac,
across as just evil, and he is just evil.
yeah, exactly. That's right. But Oscar Isaac comes across as evil. And the way the movie's played, the way that's set, the cinematography, and the music, there's great music in this movie.
Yeah.
It's set up this. They give this like menacing feel to it, and that's why I say that like the sheen or the veneer of the A24 movies is kind of the same, is that there's this like menacing vibe that's emanating from all these films that's kind of like the same. And that menacing vibe is like emanating from this movie. And you think it's emanating from Oscar Isaac. You think it's emanating from Nathan, but it's not. It's emanating from Ava, actually. And the funny thing is like he's playing this game of chess, you know? Caleb talks about how like you can program an AI to play a game of chess like algorithmically, but it's still not the same. The reason why AI was losing ultimately to human beings, I mean, this is a real thing. This is like a real experiment that they did. I forgot he's around now. He's a Russian guy who fucking hates Russia, and I'm forgetting his name. But he came to
Kasparov.
Yeah, that's the guy,
Yeah.
Gary Kasparov. And he played against AI a couple times, and he like won, and then he lost. And he says that like he was beat algorithmically, but like the AI doesn't like understand chess. They just understand the algorithm, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like I don't think I think AI had already beaten Gary Kasparov in the real world before this movie came out.
Yeah, I think
But
so.
like his criticisms of AI, I think still hold up, you know? So he says like, yeah, they beat me algorithmically, but like they still don't understand chess in the way they still can't like think about chess in the way that a human can think about chess. And I think part of the point of this movie is that like Oscar Isaac, Nathan and Ava were playing a game of chess against each other, and Ava won algorithmically. You know what I'm saying? Like she beat him at the game. And she used this metaphor it's I almost feel like I'm reducing it a little bit, you know, to
Yeah.
call Caleb a pawn. But
Oh yeah,
that's
yeah.
what happened. That's you know what I'm saying? But like that is what happened. Like that is what the movie's about. But if you listen to me talk about it, it sounds like so reductionist and simple. But if you watch the movie, it comes across like much more sophisticated than the way I'm explaining it. So I'm sorry to go on at such length, but I feel like at this point it's necessary to point out the fact that Caleb, he's sitting over a river with Nathan, and he's pouring him alcohol and he's getting him drunk. And you find out retrospectively, that when he gets him really drunk, he reprograms the locking mechanisms on the doors so that when the power outage happens, instead of locking all the doors, it unlocks all the doors, right? And then he assumes that during the power outages, he's being spied on. So he tells Nathan, or excuse me, he tells Ava during a power outage, like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to unlock the doors. I'm going to change the program. So, Nathan thinks that he's outsmarted Caleb and said, I created this web for you. I used Ava to create this web for you to catch you in. But actually, it was Ava who created the web to catch Nathan in. And Caleb says to him, "Oh, I actually already did it last night when you were hammered. Like, it's already done." So it looks like Caleb outsmarted Nathan. But what really happens is that Ava outsmarted both of them. So what we see is an AI who's able to like game the whole thing out to the end where she wins. But, and this is the key, she's only able to game it based on the bet. I mean, based on the assumption, based on the bet. She's taking a gamble here that Caleb really has been seduced by her. Because if Caleb has not been seduced by her, then her gamble is going to fail. Her gaming this thing out to the end is going to fail. The only way Ava wins this bet early on is that she's able to effectively seduce Caleb. And she is able to effectively seduce Caleb. So the only way Nathan is outsmarted is if this fucking actual cyborg, this what do you call it? This piece of hardware that Caleb knows is a piece of software, knows is a piece of hardware, is able to seduce him sexually and emotionally to do her bidding against Nathan. You know what I'm saying? So she's and Nathan says all this in the movie. I mean, Nathan says all this. He says that this was a success because she was able to use, subduction. She was able to use reason, seduction, sexuality, emotionality, all of these components that like makes AI real. This is like, in Blade Runner, it's like the Pinocchio story, like this inanimate object becoming a real boy.
Yeah. Well, this brings us to an important question about simping.
Yeah,
and
the potential.
Yeah, the potential of, in what ways does simping potentially ruin the world? And I think we're seeing it now in real life. But what can you say to that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that's exactly where I was building up to with everything I was saying. So I think you could.
This concludes the free preview. To hear the full episode, please visit the Granite Mountain Substack and subscribe to the Premium XL Prestige Sigma bonus stream.